Wow! What a week! Sega has finally released the last 10 games for the Sega Genesis Mini, and it wasn't even just 10 games, but 12. And 2 of those games are games that were never even really technically on the Genesis in the first place. Wow! It's really safe to say, at this point, that Sega and M2 have put together something truly special. This library of games is nothing short of phenomenal. But of course, it's not perfect. Not even close, actually. So we've put together all of our gripes into one list, here. These are the 10 most perplexingly bad additions to the Genesis Mini, along with the 10 most egregious omissions that really, in a perfect world, ought to have taken their place.
Terrible addition.
Number 10. Mega Man, The Wily Wars. Right off the bat, a controversial one. I know a lot of people are really excited about this game. They're calling it the system seller. And I'm really interested too, for real. But do we really need, in 2019, yet another way to play Mega Man 1, 2, and 3? I have this stuff on my phone, our 3DS, our Switch. How many times do I need to beat Mega Man 2 before I'm allowed to die? On top of that, I've often heard rumor that this compilation, particularly the PAL version, wasn't all that good, and that it suffered from slowdown and a less than great rendition of the soundtrack. Instead, it would have been nice to see
egregious omission.
Number 10. Aladdin. People love this game. I love this game. I wasn't expecting to see it, but I know a lot of you were. Honestly, I have to admit it's a tad overrated, but its status as a beloved Genesis classic is just undeniable. And the key word I think here is Genesis. Aladdin is a game people really think of when they think about the Genesis, and Mega Man really just isn't. I like to keep that with my Nintendo, and frankly, Nintendo is where Mega Man really belongs.
Terrible addition.
Number 9. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. There are a lot of puzzle block dropping type games on this thing, like way more than I originally thought, which is fine, but when I think Genesis, I think columns, and that's honestly good enough for me. Mean Bean Machine is a pretty good game for sure, but I don't really regard it as essential. The attempt to ham-fistedly associate it with the Saturday morning Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon is also pretty flat. Did anyone else really like that cartoon? Such that we needed a game themed after it?
Egregious omission.
Number 9. Instead, it would have been nice to see the original Streets of Rage. I know a lot of people think Streets of Rage 2 is sufficient, but honestly, the music and historical importance of the original is just too much for me to ignore. And it's undoubtedly a more fun 2-player game than either Puyo Puyo or the Mean Bean Machine.
Terrible addition.
Number 8. Earthworm Jim. Another game some people are super excited about is Earthworm Jim, and I don't really know why. Does anyone else remember just how average that game was? In every way? Except for the incredible graphics? It's a pretty sloppy platformer, and I think there's a good reason they stopped making sequels into the next generation of consoles. It just wasn't that good. I know it was popular. I know people thought it was so hip and edgy, but don't believe the hype. Earthworm Jim was better off staying in the 90s, along with saggy pants and pogs. He can hang out there, forever, with Boogerman and Chakan, the Forever Man.
Egregious omission.
Number 8. Crusader of Sin. On the other hand, it would have been perfect if we got Crusader of Sin. I'm blown away by the fact that the Mini has almost every single noteworthy action-adventure RPG ever made for the Genesis. You got Landstalker, you got Light Crusader, Beyond Oasis, so adding Crusader of Sin would have just completed the set in the most perfect of ways. I know a lot of people out there were hoping for this too, and for a lot of you it's considered an essential game. I honestly think the game is just okay, but at the same time, it's way more Sega than Earthworm Jim ever was to me. It even has a bizarre cameo by Sonic in it. It should have been included on that merit alone.
Terrible edition.
Number 7. Eternal Champions. Eternal Champions. This is another controversial one because I know a lot of people are nostalgic for this Sega-only fighting game. It's just that the game, to me, is just so painfully bad. It's a Street Fighter Mortal Kombat clone with lame characters and bad controls. That's the best description I have for this game. It's so bizarrely generic too. It feels like it belongs on the Atari Jaguar or the 3DO or some other reject console. And honestly, I never knew one person that either owned it or talked about it. But then I guess that's just because I had no friends.
Egregious omission.
Number 7.
Shining Force 2.
Instead, wouldn't it have been nice to get Shining Force 2? Shining Force is on there, and it's easily one of the best RPGs on the Genesis, but Shining Force 2 is arguably better. I really expected to see it, and I know a lot of other people did too. Plus it's a game that you can play alone, all by yourself, even if you don't have any friends. Will you be my friend, Xeon the Devil King?
Terrible edition.
Number 6.
Comic Zone.
Comic Zone. Comic Zone isn't a bad game, but it isn't really a great game either. And really, I'm just bored and tired of seeing it. It's included on all the Genesis collections, and I don't know why. No one bought this game. It came out on after the Saturn launched, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't even care. Did this game even launch in Japan or Europe? I guess we're just getting it because it's a US exclusive. Maybe. Whatever.
Egregious omission.
Number 6. Ristar. It's just wrong that we're missing out on Ristar, which is another late Genesis game that no one bought. I know Ristar is another one that always gets a release, but not this time. And it's so good. It's a crying shame. Sorry, Ristar. Hopefully we'll see you for the Genesis Ultra Mini console, rumored to be released in 2039 for the Sega Genesis's 50th anniversary. Pre-order yours now on Amazon.com today.
Terrible edition.
Number 5. Vector Man. Vector Man. Another late American Genesis game, but only this one seems to have more of a following. The critics certainly thought this game was the bee's knees way back in 1995. I think it kinda sucks. And while this game plays just as boringly as Comic Zone, it pales in comparison to Comic Zone's panache and creativity. Yes, it's even more boring than Comic Zone. Just look at your character and the lifeless, empty backgrounds. You're literally playing as balls! Egregious omission. Number 5.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Hyperstone Heist.
So then why didn't we get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Hyperstone Heist? A fun multiplayer sequel to the arcade game that's every bit as good as the Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo. Obviously, the reason has to be licensing issues. But this game was really high on most people's lists, and seeing it on the Mini would have been a dream come true, like finishing college, or living on your own island made entirely out of banana pudding.
Terrible edition.
Number 4. Alex a Kid in the Enchanted Castles. As I've said in the past, no one likes this game. I get that it was a launch title, and that Alex Kidd was once a vital part of Sega's marketing strategy. Sorta like the way making video games used to be, before they became a Yakuza and Sonic the Hedgehog factory. But this is seriously one of the worst games in the entire Alex the Kid series. It has slippery controls, unimaginative design, lame music, and the worst boss encounters ever in a video game. You play rock, paper, scissors, a game of chance. It's possible to memorize your opponent's choices if you play over and over again, but that fact actually somehow makes it even worse.
Egregious omission.
Number 4. Herzogs 2. But it would have been my personal dream come true if we got Herzogs Y, one of the best two-player games ever made. No, make that the best two-player game ever made for the Sega Genesis. And I was really expecting to see it too. Sega owns Technosoft now, and Thunder Force 3 is already on there. I guess I'm just gonna have to wait and play the M2 port being released for the Switch later this summer.
Terrible addition.
Number 3. Sonic Spinball. Sonic Spinball is yet another game that most people have heard of, and yet almost everyone doesn't like it. Hastily thrown together by the Sega Technical Institute in late 1993, after they realized that Sonic 3 wasn't going to launch in time for the critical Christmas sales season. Sonic Spinball combines beautiful graphics, horrible frame rates, stiff controls, and boring repetitive levels, all into what becomes the very first bad use of Sonic the Hedgehog in a video game, and thus a long and proud Sega tradition of lousy Sonic the Hedgehog games was finally born.
Egregious omission.
Number 3. Revenge of Shinobi. So then where is Revenge of Shinobi? Holy freaking cow. You mean we're not getting Revenge of Shinobi? I think I'm gonna be sick. For many of us, this is one of the most essential of all Genesis games, and for me it's probably the game that I logged away the most hours. Shinobi 3 is technically a better game, but Revenge of Shinobi is an icon that essentially defines the system, and its absence is a crying shame.
Terrible addition.
Number 2. Tetris? So then why are we getting Tetris? I get that for collectors, the existence of the ultra-rare Sega port of Tetris is a really neat little plus. But as good as Tetris is, it's still a game that we've all played elsewhere, and which many Switch owners currently enjoy in a much better format on pretty much a daily basis. I really don't think this game needed to be included. Its inclusion is a cute stunt, but really nothing more.
Egregious omission.
Number 2. Rocket Knight Adventures. And it's the sheer emptiness of this stunt that makes the bitter omission of Rocket Knight Adventures all the more painful. Oh, what a missed opportunity this was. And just when it looked so promising, with all these classic Konami games coming at us, Rocket Knight Adventures is easily one of the best platformers ever made for the Genesis. That's it. I don't think there's anything else. I don't think there's any reason to go on. I guess I won't live long enough to see the Sega Genesis Ultra Mini released in 2039. This is it.
But wait, there's more!
Huh? What, me?
There's still one more!
One more? One more. Okay. One more. And the single worst addition to the Genesis Mini is Space Harrier 2. Man, this game is bad, with a choppy frame rate that virtually makes playing it impossible, and it's a mere footnote in the history of Genesis games. No one thinks about it, no one cares about it, yet there it is, a turd among gems and what might be the greatest Genesis compilation ever made. And so without further ado, the number 1 worst omission to the Sega Genesis Mini is... Of course, you know what it is, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Without a doubt, the most wished for and talked about game on our channel has been Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and I think many of us, myself included, thought that perhaps this was going to be just the right moment for Sega to go ahead and re-release that game after almost 10 years. But alas, something is amiss. Does it have something to do with the late Michael Jackson? Maybe, maybe not. Why not check out our extensive video on that subject in the links below. Anyway, Which games are you disappointed to see left out of the Genesis Mini's final lineup? Were there any additions that you felt didn't belong? Please let us know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.